Good awakening, everyone. Matrushri Nilaya presents a book reading. This precious day, I begin reading a book from my father's treasure of books, the Bhagwad Geeta by Swami Chinmayananda. May Lord Krishna bestow upon us his blessings as we start off the journey with a prayerful meditation. Geeta Dhyanam. ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी. Om, the monosyllable indicative of Supreme Brahman. Parthaya Pratibodhitam, with which Partha, Arjuna, was enlightened. Bhagavata, by the Lord. Narayanena, by Narayana. Swayam, himself. Vyasena, by Vyasa. Grathitam, incorporated. Purana Munina, by the ancient sage. Madhye Mahabharatam, in the midst of Mahabharata. Advaita Amruta Varshini, the showerer of the nectarian philosophy of Advaita. Bhagavatim, the Divine Mother. Ashtadasha Adhyayinim, in the form of 18 chapters. Amba, O Blessed Mother. Tvam, thee. Anusandadhami, I constantly meditate. Bhagavad Geeta, O Bhagavad Geeta, Bhavadveshinim, which is an antidote to the experiences of change, that is, destroyer of samsara or rebirth. Om, O Bhagavad Geeta, with which Partha was enlightened by the Lord Narayana himself, and which was incorporated in the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa, the Divine Mother, who is showering the nectarian philosophy of Advaita in the form of 18 chapters. Upon thee, O Blessed Mother, I constantly meditate. You are the sure antidote to the rocking experience of change, that is, the destroyer of samsara. It is usual in the traditional of the Aryans to pray to the Lord prior to the beginning of any auspicious undertaking, whether spiritual or secular. These 9 stanzas, usually attributed to Sri Madhusudana Saraswati, are chanted by students devoted to the study of the Gita in India before they start their daily lessons. Usually, our mind is in a state of disintegration and exhaustion due to the daily tussles, competitions, and tensions of life. Thus, when the mind reaches the study room, though it is efficient in the marketplace, it does not prove itself equally efficient to meet the subtle arguments to met with in philosophical discussions. The instruments of feeling and understanding need a general cleansing and adjustment. This is achieved generally by selecting the early period of the dawn for our studies and by physical preparations such as a bath, the atmosphere of the prayer room, and the presence of the revered Guru. Even then, once in the puja room or at the study table, we still need to make some finer adjustments in our mental makeup to bring our entire faculties into play. We can find a beautiful example of what I say in modern laboratories. A scientist might have his laboratory assistants who would adjust the eyepiece and the object piece of the microscope for him and yet the assistant would have adjusted the instrument only according to the assistant's own vision. There may be subtle differences in the powers of vision of the experimenting scientist and assistant, thus necessitating some still finer adjustments. These fine manipulations are to be made by the scientist himself in order that he may observe the slide for himself best. The general methods of sadhana and the anxiety and urgency felt by the seekers to understand the Gita may adjust the instruments of their feelings and thoughts, but a perfect integration between the mind and the intellect still remains to be achieved. This fine adjustment is gained by the seekers by singing these 9 stanzas with thorough appreciation of their full significance and import. Without reference, respect and faith for the very textbook in hand, no serious study can ever take place. Therefore, the very first stanza for meditation is dedicated to register our reverence and express our adoration to the Divine Mother Gita herself. It is said that the Bhagwad Geeta is a scripture in which, as in the Upanishads, there is a glorious teacher who is teaching not a highly evolved student of Upanishadic type, but an ordinary prince of the realm, an average man, an intellect riddled with 1,000 desires and anxieties, as in any of us, Arjuna. The Pandava prince, though generally famous and known as Arjuna, is also named Partha in Mahabharata. Thus, the very first line indicates that the teacher was the master of the masters, and that no better qualified man could be found to give us a discourse upon the true way of living. Again, as ordinary man is rather frightened of the very subject matter of philosophy, since it is his experience that when a great teacher talks to a great student, an average person can only sit, listen and adore the talks, but can never be able to understand the matter and be benefited by it. This difficulty will not be there in the Gita, as it is indicated that these discourses have been addressed to a below average student, and therefore we, hearing these discourses, would be highly benefited by these facile educative talks. It is possible that the Gita is an Upanishadic talk between a mastermind and an average man at the Mahabharata time. But the theme being transcendental, it might have been misreported. This conversation, which is supposed to have taken place in Kurukshetra, might have actually taken place elsewhere and at a different period of time. Since we have not ourselves directly overheard it, we have to depend entirely upon the good sense of the reporter. It has been indicated in the second line that we have a dependable correspondent to report for us the Gita which was sung for the first time, before the very first arrow was shot in the Mahabharata war. Vyasa, the ancient seer, recorded and incorporated it in the center of his classical work, the Mahabharata. Every word here is important, and the words bend down under the weight of their own heavy significances. Vyasa, the father of the Vedas, who first collected, edited and published the Veda text and who thereafter gave us the dialectics of Vedanta in his Brahma Sutra, himself a great man of realization, was indeed very well fitted for the job. This ancient seer had both the mastery of the theoretical science of religion, Hinduism, and also practical experience of the Supreme. Not only had he reported this conversation in the most enchanting lyrical poetry of the Gita, but had also found it worthy to be incorporated in the masterpiece of his matured age, the greatest classical piece of the world, the Mahabharata. The Gita occurs in the Bhishma Parva in the Mahabharata and occupies almost the geometric center of the wonder classic. In fact, any student of the Mahabharata will willingly accept that the whole saga serves as a fitting background for the jewel of the Gita to shine out. Even if an omniscient being had discussed to benefit an ordinary man, and even if a great mastermind had reported it and found it good enough to give it an important place in his masterpiece, we of the modern age might not have felt at all inspired unless we knew that the subject matter was worthy of our attention. In the third line, it is discussed that the 18 chapters of the divine song discuss the immortal goal of oneness, which is the theme of Vedanta, the Upanishads. By the realization of this goal, the sorrows and limitations suffered by an ordinary individual in his transactions with the world outside through the instruments of his body, mind, and intellect are dried up, and the individual gets himself released to an ample field of freedom, at once divine and joyous. In the last line, the Gita is addressed and approached as a mother, and this is to be understood as very significant. The Gita mother, the divine womb that gave birth to the universal religion, is the one to whom the children of any age can always confidently turn, expecting but total forgiveness and complete love even after they have committed a million outrageous acts. Similarly, here the Gita, the textbook of life, is approached as our mother because she never gives up anybody as completely lost, and everyone who lovingly approaches her courtyard calling out, "Ma, Ma, Ma," can be sure that she will accept him in spite of all his past crimes and mischiefs. Gita adoration is not accompanied by a mere ritualistic worship of the textbook. The divine song is a textbook discussing a way of living to be lived and experienced. We generally live by our own convictions, and as our convictions, so are our thoughts, and as our thoughts, so are our actions. The Hindu spiritual study accomplishes this necessary revolution in the intellectual levels and thereby carves out our thoughts into a more healthy pattern. These thoughts get projected out into the world as actions. Thereafter, our nature makes us master men in facing all our challenges in life. Constant remembrance of the way of life and the ideal goal of existence, as indicated in the Gita, is, therefore, the surest and the best method of revering and respecting Mother Gita.